Welcome to the Lalulah podcast, real life conversations about modern sexuality and how to live a happy, healthy, turned on life. I'm your host Laura Allen, a holistic health coach and founder of Lalulah, an online platform offering natural erotica toys as well as the educational tools you need to expand your pleasure in and outside the bedroom. Welcome back to another episode of the Lalulah podcast. I have a Mother's Day special for you today, and I am speaking with the beautiful Nikki Rhodes, who is a woman of many, many talents. She's also a mother of 3, and she is the creatress of NZ Spirit Tribe and all of the beautiful events that are put on underneath that umbrella. And today we are really speaking to the erotic mother, the sensual mother, and talking about pleasure, how important it is to acknowledge our pleasure and our desires as pregnant women, as new mothers, or as mothers of many. And we talk about ways to cultivate pleasure and have a healthy relationship to our sexuality within ourselves and with our lover, our partner. And this was such a beautiful podcast and such a great insight for me personally, as I'm not a mother at the moment. But it was really gorgeous to hear Nikki's journey and her knowledge and her, hands-on experience when it comes to feeling alive and vital and erotic and turned on, and also holding down a household and showing up as the best mother that she can be. So without further ado, let's get on with the show. This is Nikki Rhodes. Hey girl.
Hey.
Hi.
So good to be here.
So beautiful to be here.
Yeah, amazing.
Really snuggly and warm in your beautiful home.
Oh, so nice to have you after the wind last night.
Yeah, it was like a cyclone.
It was a tornado.
It was apocalyptic.
In Auckland.
Yeah, really. I'm here with Nikki Rhodes, and we've just been sharing beautiful tea and having gorgeous catch-ups, and now we're all snuggled up together and ready to talk about motherhood and sexuality and the erotic mother, I guess, and all of the challenges that women face through this period of their lives and beyond. And I'm really excited just to deep dive into it. But off the back of Mother's Day, Nikki wrote a beautiful post, and I'm just going to start this podcast off by sharing this post with you all. It starts with the erotic mother, because once we give birth, we are not sexually defunct. We are not for a life of tracksuits and mum buns and school drop-offs. We are not desireless. Instead, true desire awakens in us. Life becomes intimately more sensual. Our understanding of the power that resides in between our legs throbs us awake. We have a purpose like no other. Time is more precious than ever, and that which birthed our babies will no longer allow entrance to just anyone or anything. As mothers, we understand the true meaning of sanctity, of truth. We can feel true presence or lack of in our lovers, and we accept nothing less. We are lucky to be able to engage in deep conversation with our yonis, having had to forge the most intimate relationship with them amongst the throes of birth. So, show up or get out. Embracing the erotic mother within feels both intimately ancient and strikingly revolutionary in a society that supports us turning into our kids taxi drivers and would rather celebrate plastic and Photoshop on billboards. Yeah, that's Nikki Rhodes, and if you don't follow her on Instagram, her words are potent. So first of all, I highly recommend you get involved there. But thank you, Nikki, for coming.
Yeah, it's so good to be here, and so amazing to hear those words be read by someone else. Yeah, thanks. That was nice.
So you're a mother. First, you want to just give me a really brief description of your beautiful family dynamic, because you've got some babies and you're birthing some really big things into the world at the moment. So do you want to just give us a quick rundown? Oh my gosh, wait, stop, hold the phone. Before we go into that, I forgot the most important question of the podcast, and that is, What color are you today and why?
Oh wow! I was just deep in one track of thought, and then asked this one here. Exciting,
just to keep you on your toes.
No, it's truly like indicative of the journey of motherhood. You know, changing path just when you think one thing's happening, another one is. What color am I today? I would be a peach. Partly because I'm inspired because of your beautiful scarf that you're wearing. Was this super soft peach. Peach is like that's signaling the change of the seasons. And I feel that big at the moment. Stepping out of festival season, where we run huge events, very, very out there with our parenting and our kids and everything, and dropping into sort of more sort of softer, softer hues of life. And the peach, peach.
Peach. I love it. I'm so grateful that you shared that actually, because I'm also feeling very peach today. I did a yoni steam last night.
Epic.
And now my yoni is just feeling like peachy.
Yeah, totally.
So it's like, great color.
Amazing.
Okay, so now we're going to go back to
yes.
What we were saying before. So your family dynamic.
Right. Well, I was very, very young. I've always had this desire for creation. I've had a strong sense of motivation my whole life. To achieve things and to grow things and to create things and do really well in life. And it's been both a blessing in many ways and also a hindrance at times. And my tuning into what it means to be a mother and to be fulfilled sexually and to be fueling and stoking the embers of an epic relationship, that task or those tasks, that's what's really, really helped me to find the balance amongst that dedication and that motivation to sort of achieve. So as a teenager, I fell pregnant I became pregnant. Fell pregnant is such like an interesting term in itself. Became pregnant. I was probably 20 actually, so just out of teenagehood. And I jumped straight from being a teenager into motherhood. And I think this is the case for anyone that has children before they realize who their woman is, or before they really identify with their inner woman, like their true inner desire, right? And that can be someone maybe who isn't a teenager, but who is young still. And many benefits with this, but also an interesting kind of postponing of my sexual growth, of my sexual fullness, right, as a woman. And I had these children very, very young, and I dove into parenthood like front on, just like head first. Yeah. And I love it. I loved it, and I love it. I love the challenges. I loved the change in the day. I love how great I felt throughout the period, raising these children and watching them grow and studying about them, studying how to be even a better mother, parenting from my heart, with sort of breastfeeding for long periods of time, wanting to bring natural birth to the process. All of this was so epic, but in its place, or in my focus on the parenthood, I realized that it was really freaking difficult to balance being a woman, balance discovering that woman and that eroticness, that desire, the self-love, the pleasure. It felt so foreign to me, if I'm completely honest, early on. And I realized maybe I'm just not a sexual woman. Like maybe I'm just one of those women who doesn't have to have sex, who doesn't desire sex, who can kind of live in a relationship, but just not feel that. And I just kind of went along with that belief for a while, just thinking, this is just me. This is just the reality of my life, until I saw how much pain it was causing. That without sinking into my pleasure, without prioritizing what moved me, without feeling into the magic of a deeply fulfilling relationship on all levels and stoking those fires, I was missing out on so much in life. And it was at that moment I knew something had to change, and so it did.
It really, really did. So you've got 3 beautiful daughters.
3 daughters.
And how old are they now?
So they're 12, 9, and 7.
Yeah. Epic.
So it's like a lot. It is a lot. And them becoming women and then moving into a teenage space of self-discovery, and me realizing that society is really going to encourage them to study and work and focus on the external, and that what they could be at risk of is what I was at risk of, or what happened to me, which was that detachment from what truly moves you. The detachment to your pleasure, your sensuality, your integrity, your intuition, all the stuff that our society doesn't put much importance on, but is so vital.
Yeah.
And that's what honestly made me make the change. I decided that I could see if I wasn't living my truth, and I was like, go fulfill your desires, but they were watching this mother who didn't know herself in this way, then I'm at major risk of sort of passing this wound of suppression down. It sounds really airy-fairy, but that's like honestly what I found. I thought, man, I got to live this truth. I've got to find out what's beneath these covers.
Yeah. So, and you were in a marriage at that time as well, and so I'm hearing you say that you were just not feeling any kind of lust for or sexual desire within your relationship or for life in general, and just kind of like going along with this kind of like mother archetype, would you say, doing life but not engaging with your pleasure. And so
yeah, totally. I was married to a beautiful man, and we had a beautiful life, and things were great. On the surface, below though, a lot was missing, and a lot was, I needed a real shake up. I needed something quite drastic to happen in order to discover aspects of myself which I had left behind, and which I wasn't able to uncover within that relationship. And it's really difficult for me to explain it in any other way than that. I just had to let that one go. And when I found myself alone, when I found myself in charge of these children, or sort of, with my babies, sharing parenting, all these things that I hadn't really done before, I realized that it was vital that I begin this work on myself, because if I don't now, I'll be 40 in 10 years, and then it'll come up. And if I don't then, I'll be 50. And if I don't then, I'll be 60, and I will be full of regret. And so I needed to discover kind of what lay within, because we are sexual beings. We are sensual, orgasmic, ecstatic beings that long to be reminded of our natural state, which is one of not struggle, which is one of bliss, which is one where relationships can blossom. And I knew this deep down. So I left this relationship, spent some time on my own, and started to discover what truly moved me. I made some hard calls as well.
Yeah.
I dropped jobs that no longer served. I changed patterns. I took deep care of myself with food, deep care of myself with exercise, really watched the circle I was in, and started to take down little walls and barriers. Like, shared really openly about how I was feeling for the first time. And with the softness and the softening to life, and this sort of flowing, and this desire to not hold my cards so tight, just to fold my hand because I knew it wasn't working, I was really rewarded. I was really, really rewarded. And my children witnessed this sort of transformation in their mother. One who still held the home down, did the drop-offs, made the lunches, read the books at night, filled in the forms, but who also seemed to have this kind of like inner light, this inner spark. And I want to encourage women, this is my message now, like, we have it within us. We have it within us to have these deeply fulfilling relationships with ourselves, to have these deeply fulfilling relationships with our lovers. And it takes some bravery, but it's within our reach.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the first thing that's coming to mind is, how did cultivating this pleasure, again, not only with yourself but with your lovers and with your life, how did that impact the way that you were living? Like, what sort of changes did you start to see when you started to take your pleasure seriously and soften into it, like you were saying?
When you get those comments by a friend that you hate at the time, and you despise them, and you sort of plot ways of never calling them back, but they have this deep effect on you that you're like infinitely grateful for. Yeah, one of those happened. And we're around the table, and I was preparing the meal, and she said to me, "God, it must be super hard to be you." And I just paused and I almost like choked on whatever I was eating and thought, oh wow, I'm sounding so locked, so tight, so caught up that my best friend is even saying, you know, like, it's hard to be, it must be so hard for her to be around me as well. And it was kind of that moment that I started to see I had all these walls up. I was making things harder for me because I had this love affair, not with life or pleasure or my man, but I had this love affair with struggle. And so many of us have this, you know, like, if I could just jump through this hoop, this will work. If I could jump through that or buy that thing or achieve this. And it comes from when we're at school and we're pushed into competition and we're pushed into rankings, we're pushed into achieving, and the banks love it and materialism loves it. But ultimately it's really difficult to maintain that and stay connected to our hearts and connected to our bodies and I don't know, have epic sex, right? Mm-hmm. So when I started to drop these things or see how I was acting for what it was, I realized things like genuinely needed to change. And one of the things that started to change, like I said, is I dropped things that signified struggle for me. That I started to see struggle as part of my self-sabotage process. The way I would literally sabotage something good for me by placing a struggle in there and then struggling with it. And that is short-term blindness. It keeps us kind of closed. It keeps us blocked. And is something that we, that's a big sign for being stuck in that space.
Wow. I'm having so many epiphany moments in my head right now. And just, it's such a like simple statement. It's like being addicted to struggle, because it's just kind of like we can really, it's just a pattern, right? And we're so used to sort of, the human brain is almost wired to look for the saber-toothed tiger. That's, you know, it's always kind of on the defense mode. And so when we're in a great situation, I'm referring right now specifically to my relationship because it's something that I've noticed so much. It's like I'm in a beautiful, healthy, nourishing relationship, yet I notice constantly how my mind is looking for the problems, looking for the struggle, like, and then going into that. So just to have you say that is like, oh, such a big realization. Like, we don't actually need to subscribe to this struggle mentality and bring struggle in when it's not really there. And that's really beautiful. And like sometimes there is, like, of course, but not creating it ourselves.
Yeah, that is so true. A lot of us are afraid what happens beyond the struggle. What does getting what we want feel like? That's actually a really scary space.
So scary.
And so dropping the things that kept me in struggle also involved or forced me to drop things like ideas about stuff. I had to let go of the idea that I am only worthy or that life is only good if it looks a certain way. I had to let go of the idea that building my finances and my security with this world, with a marriage, because it is a bit of paper, and that will mean that we're forever in this relationship because we signed a bit of paper in this house, because I signed a bit of paper, I own it, and I pay the bank this, and this is what all these things I had to sort of push aside and go, none of it is security. It is all an illusion. It is an illusion that is not real. And what's real for me right now is to feel. And I see so many women in my work come to me with this disconnection to feeling.
Yeah. Because
again, you know, struggle plays a role here, stress plays a role here. They just don't feel anymore, or they don't know what they want. Or they've been so used to taking or just receiving or just feeling that, or just doing, you know, going through the motions of the day, that actual autonomy or deciding is difficult. Like maybe some women come to me and say, I don't know what I want to eat. I can't even make that kind of decision. And when we are so far from our center, from our choice, we're in trouble as women. We're not the lovers that we know we can be. We're not showing up for our men how they deserve us to show up for them. We're not showing up for ourselves as these sovereign, self-sourcing beings who can pleasure ourselves whether we're in relationship or without. We become needy. We become stressed. We become wrinkled. We become old. And And no one wants that too young, right? Mm-hmm. We want to feel fullness. And like we spoke about at the beginning, the peach, right? The peach, I think, is quite symbolic. It's not just the color. It's this fullness, this ripeness that we desire out of life. And that honestly takes a bit of bravery to get to.
Yeah, beautiful. I'd love to sort of hone back into the motherhood piece. And I know that you work with a lot of women, and being a mother yourself, I would love to know, like, what are some of the common challenges that, you know, new mothers or, you know, old mothers or mothers of many face when it comes to sexuality?
Yeah, right. Okay, so we become pregnant and we carry these babies within us. And from that moment on, we're forced to think about another being or another entity, whether we're conscious or not of it. It physically comes in our way. It physically takes up space within our sexual interactions with others. As our belly grows and our vagina changes in shape, changes in sensation, our desire to be touched changes hugely, you know, from the moment of conception, and changes in relationships occur. A lot of women don't know how to understand or don't know how to work through these quite sudden changes because the hormonal surge is so great, and walls immediately come up between partners then. We become unsure how to communicate our new desires to our partner, especially if we haven't had practice doing it before.
And what are the, like, new desires sexually in the bedroom, or kind of new desires
completely.
like, can you please go and get me a milkshake, or like,
right.
like, can you rub my feet, baby, please? Like asking for new things is must be part of it too.
Totally, we've been taught to be these super independent, self-sourcing women, and that is true. But it's difficult to sometimes receive nurture. So to say to the partner, look, like, I'm just gonna really need this for dinner and not what you've cooked. Or I really desire, a milkshake right now. All of it can be very new ground for a woman who hasn't been used to sort of speaking her desires in this way. Another thing is speaking about her desires in the bedroom, and that is very real. And that looks like, I really don't feel like heavy, deep penetration right now. My cervix is so tender. But I'd love a lot of attention around my breasts or my arms or my neck or kissing. And for women, again, who haven't been used to tuning into their desire, tuning into what they want, communicating what they want, that can feel really scary. And we go from this place where there's not actually another sort of being that needs to be, or an external being that needs to be fed and cared for and dressed and considered in an external sense. We go from this period now being difficult to when it's actually born and is that external, extra little being in between us. And sometimes it can be even more difficult at that stage to communicate our desires and our wants and our needs. And so getting through each day becomes a priority rather, let alone sex, let alone pleasure.
Yeah. I mean, I imagine that sex and pleasure must just get really pushed to the bottom of the priority list. Like, often, once a baby comes out, and that's super real.
Yeah, often a parent, you can go from a 2 household income to a single household income. So there's more pressure on the man to provide. He comes home, or the other woman to provide. He or she comes home and would love to be intimate, or perhaps is looking forward, and the mother perhaps at home is feeling overwhelmed with the duties of sustaining another life or day. They're on these 2 different planes.
Yeah.
They've had these 2 different days of existence, and there's no one out there kind of teaching this or supporting new couples, new families in the space, or nothing really ongoing.
Yeah.
In other cultures, there's grandparents at home, there's aunties at home, there are older children around, and that weight can be sort of, the weight of parenthood can be shared. Yeah. And the couple get time. I remember it being sometimes 1 or 2 years into a baby that we would have our first date night. And that's extreme.
Yeah.
That is so extreme, to go that long without just seeing each other and being with each other. the father sometimes can be confused about conveying his needs. He can be like, gosh, she's breastfeeding all day, she's serving this baby so much with her body, I feel like a pain asking for more from her. So he will then push down his desires, and it's all about communication.
Wow, yeah.
Right?
I can see, like, I'm not a mother myself, although, mums out there who are listening, please don't roll your eyes at me when I say this, but I do have a dog.
I'm rolling my eyes right now.
I know that it's completely and utterly different, but the reason why I wanted to speak to this is because what I've noticed since I got SID is, like, my life changed, and I needed to all of a sudden prioritize things that took away from my self-care or from my business or from my day-to-day. I need to walk him, I need to, like, include him into my, like, I need to create more rituals and more routine. And so I know that it's not the same as having a baby, and I appreciate that. But one thing that I have started to do with him that I found helped a lot was the things that I share with him, do them in a way that brought me pleasure. And so I started to notice that I didn't necessarily love going to the dog park as much. I didn't love being in parks, but I loved going to the beach with him. And so now going to the beach with him in the morning and walking barefoot in the sand and not taking my phone and using it as a meditation, mindful practice, and bringing pleasure to that time shared with him was a way for me to incorporate this kind of pleasure and enjoyment and mindfulness into my life with him in it, instead of it being a chore. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's deeply, deeply important to. I speak about this in the post. Our children can be overwhelming in their needs, overwhelming in their requirements, or society's requirements of us. At 3 they ought to be doing a language, a musical instrument, a dance. Like, I don't know about you, but the pressure I place on myself when I hear that unless they have another language by 7, it's much harder for them to learn it, I think, oh my gosh, I've just missed this window. Like, the pressure we place on ourselves can be huge. And if all I did was be their taxi driver, driving them to other foreign language classes and salsa for babies, or whatever it was, I think that you're right. I'd burn out and I would feel exhausted. And I've honestly been there. Their schedules were so extreme, or the pressure I placed on myself to feed them a certain way, to look after them a certain way, gave me pleasure, in a sense, gave my inner mother pleasure, but did not nourish my inner woman.
Right.
And my inner woman needed space. My inner woman sometimes needed to be like, I need help. My inner woman needed not pedicures and trips to the salon necessarily. She needed to be in an inner space for an hour or two where I didn't have to clean up any lunchbox or any accidental poo on the carpet, or that I could just feel my own skin and my own body. And so, like you say, I'm taking my dog not to the place that I want to. I'm taking my dog that he wants to, taking him to the place that brings me joy. And I'm going to make this experience one where I acknowledge myself. If we can change our mindset and do that as mothers, then that's the start. Because a mother can't give to her relationship, she can't give to herself if she is not giving to herself.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
key.
We gotta fill that cup. I mean, even as non-mothers, but I mean, this is relevant for all areas of our lives, in our relationships with ourselves, in our relationships with our babies, with our lovers. If our cup isn't full, then how can we give to anybody else? And so I think, there's a couple of things that I wanted to speak to here. There's the sheer overwhelm and exhaustion of having a baby. It's like it's 24/7 non-stop pressure and doing and giving and loving. And so how can women, new mothers, old mothers, mothers of many, start to create new rituals or new routines in their life that can give them more space, more time, and allow them to reconnect to woman, that intuition, that essence, that feminine essence inside them. Because let's just put the sex aside here for a second. If we're not looking after ourselves and feeling in our bodies, then how can we show up as a sexual woman? It doesn't feel abundant or rich. And so how can we kind of start to create more space?
Yeah, really good question. A lot of women say this to me. It's like, okay, how? What's the first step? And honestly, no one else is going to do it for you, and it's no one else's responsibility. Full stop. And when I got my head around this, I realized it was no use blaming my children and the lack of time I had because of their needs. It was no use blaming the needs of my partner. It was no use blaming the degrees I tried to do at the same time or the job I felt I needed. Every step of the way, every moment was in my hands, and how I was going to spend it was up to me. And when you look at the day like that, when you look at time like that, it becomes really clear where you're wasting it. It becomes really clear the times that you are spending in the day that aren't actually for you, that are still playing into that struggle mentality, that stressed, challenge, achieve, push against the grain for no reason mentality. And so a great way is carving out a non-negotiable space, a non-negotiable time where the kids know not to interrupt, or where you can get a carer if the children are too young to understand, or you can place them to bed even if paying for a carer is out of your ability, and you've got some space where you are alone. Because when we're alone, we're able to hear ourselves and to feel ourselves. And even giving ourselves 30 minutes or an hour of alone time, perhaps it's got candles, perhaps it's beautiful massage oils, perhaps it's got beautiful food, perhaps it's got just a space with quietness and nothing else going on, where you can just lie and be and feel and reconnect. This is a great place to start, because your woman will start to speak to you when she senses spaciousness. When it's busy, she'll just take a back seat and go for the ride. She might have a tantrum within sometimes, and there's those inexplainable, I don't know why I'm feeling so frustrated right now. You can attribute her for that. The inner feminine, the inner woman going, oh, I need to feel, I need some space, I need some release.
That's where that anxiety comes from, right? From
it
this
does.
Like go, and then we wonder why we're so in our heads and anxious about everything. It's just that little fire inside us saying, girlfriend, can you just stop for a second, please? Like, yeah.
Absolutely. And then we try and add an intimacy with our partners. We long for what we see on the movies or on social media, that kind of connection, that kind of life, but we haven't even sat with ourselves during the day. We haven't even taken a deep breath.
Yeah.
We haven't gone for the walk or fed ourselves well, yet we're wanting this mind-blowing cosmic connection with our lover.
Yeah.
He's wondering why we're so pent up and anxious. Carving space for self, whatever you want that to look like.
Non-negotiable. And yeah, I love how you say that. Just creating white space, schedule it in, make it happen. And like, I can almost still feel mothers like rolling their eyes at this, because I understand how hard that is.
I'm rolling my own eyes at myself, wishing I had given myself this, back when they were very little.
Yeah.
But if I could do it all again, this would be a priority, and I would make no excuses for it.
Yeah. And I mean, like, look, I mean, we live in a society, right, where like modern feminism has kind of portrayed this image of the woman being superwoman, having a career, working out, social media, mothers,
great body,
cookers. They're cookers. No, they're like, they're like providers for the family, and they're like, in this beautiful marriage. And I'm just like, to actually achieve all of that at once is, let's just like relieve ourselves of the pressure. And like, I want to invite a new mindset. It's like, even throughout pregnancy, we don't have to put that expectation to work so hard right up until the very end. Like pregnancy, I believe, I am sorry again, mothers, I'm not a mother, but I know how I want my pregnancy to look, and that is receiving and starting to, receive help from my community and like getting ready to birth this baby into the world and starting to really slow down so that I can nurture as much as possible. Look, I know that is completely like a really hard thing to say because, we've got finance in there and, all of the kind of issues that we face that we just need to keep doing things. But what are some ways that we can slow down, whether it's just like socially, maybe we don't work out as much during the week, maybe we cut our social media time, maybe we just like create a little bit more spaciousness in all of these areas to start to prepare ourselves mentally and get ourselves in the mindset of relaxing and receiving support so that we can give when the baby comes. And then there's another thing as well that you touched on earlier, like leaving it until 2 years before having a date night. It's like maybe there is this expectation on parents that you should be with the kids all the time, and taking time for yourselves is not okay. It's not acceptable because you need to be at home with the parents. Is that kind of like is that like a projection of what a good mother or good parent should look like? Is it hard to get yourself to the point of feeling worthy and like it's okay to take space from my babies, it's okay to take space from my man in my relationship to do this for myself?
That is the deepest thing. We're fed an image of motherhood from birth, which is the mother who gives, the mother who provides, the selfless mother, the mother who would give up herself for the children. Our own mothers let go of some of their autonomy, some of their desires, and our mothers' had to let go of so much in order to have the children they had, because they were born at a time where women weren't able to have the kind of freedom and the choices that are available for us. And so in our bones, we carry this mother wound, this generational weight, which makes us feel at times deeply unworthy or deeply unworthy of the freedom that we have. That somehow the freedom that's out there, or the space that's out there, or our desire, it wasn't able to be the case for our mothers and their mothers and our grandparents and great-grandparents. So we can kind of self-sabotage, we can kind of push down our own feelings for this because we carry this wound that reminds us that our mother wasn't able to embody this. And this is a very real thing at the core of our being. A lot of us have this. And it's something really to look at, because I realized that I was buying into not only aspects of this wound, but also society's portrayal of the perfect mother. Now, she still works. She's still really, really busy. But she's really, really, really self-serving. And so she gives a lot. She gives to her employer. She gives to her partner. She gives to her children. She keeps all her friendships up. She gives to the gyms and the nutritional companies to sort of try and sort of keep the body that she had. But there's no celebration of a mother who gives to herself. I can't think of one archetype, one image, one ad, one anything out there that sort of celebrates the mother who is nourished or who cares for herself. And I found like I had no reference point for this. And that my people were most impressed if I was doing all these degrees and having all these babies and not needing any help. And that's so destroying, because I think that's what eventually led me to feel almost sexless in my body, so divorced from my own spirit, in relationship with everyone, yet divorced of myself. And that's a deep wound and deeply painful and really full on to look at and to decide you don't want anymore.
Yeah.
And you can decide you don't want anymore when you often are forced to decide this when that inner screaming happens, that inner, so woman, your frustrations, any anxiety, any disconnection that you're feeling, in any of these little bubbling emotions, would everyone just be quiet? All the myriad of ways that this shows up are signals to you to take that space. I will often come into my room, I will light a candle and I will sit in there. There's a sign on my door which says, "Mummy's busy." The last thing I want to do is play with a sex toy, even though it would look super awesome and make me feel really orgasmic and awesome. I just, instead of reaching for the thing, I sit without the thing. I sit with just me, and I'll just breathe, and I'll let any feelings that come up, any resentment, any anger, and just feel them and just acknowledge them.
Beautiful.
And when I do that, it moves very fast.
Yeah.
I'm able to then pick up an awesome sex toy, or feel into my yoni egg practice, or use a beautiful dry brushing technique just after a shower, or treat myself. And I'm nourished more than the most effective I could.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. Just like, getting that moving that energy through the body. Emotions, just energy and motion, right? So just like using some tools to move it through the body before going into before having any expectation on like dropping into the body and doing this big like sexual exploration. After a day in the lives that we lead, it's so important to give ourselves a space to just do exactly what we need to do. And you know what? Even if that's watching Sex and the City on Netflix, that's fine.
Totally. Even if your baby's attached to your breast and your toddler's like pooed down your leg, find the time, clean the poo up, put the baby on the breast, and drop into the space. What do I desire? What do I want? Because I want to move to our lovers.
I want to move to the lover piece too.
The lover piece, because I'm in a heterosexual relationship, so my viewpoint is inherently heteronormative. And so I would, speak largely from that place of subjection. But of course, it applies to anyone in any kind of relationship. And if we can navigate parenthood and keeping relationships alive and thriving, then in my opinion, we are winning. Right?
Winning. Look, I mean, that's what it's, I mean, family is all about relationships and communication. And like, I feel like sex, let's just talk like heteronormative sex, is kind of very commonly displayed to us in this like fast friction, fucking style. Whereas perhaps some beautiful ways to look at intimacy and sex in a relationship while going through pregnancy and in the beginning of, having a baby, is just like exploring new ways with your partner and like how to make love with each other. And perhaps that's simply just lying with his cock inside you and just lying there and actually just not having it be a super frictional experience, but just dropping in and being there together and expanding the pleasure that way. So thinking about sexuality and throughout this period as like a new way to discover new things to do that are actually in alignment with our bodies now, because they just change so dramatically. I could imagine.
I think it's a gift. And when I embodied the fact that I was not only a woman, but I was a mother, and I was not only a woman and a mother, but I was an erotic mother who was absolutely not prepared to live in tracksuits and to let myself completely go, although that's super sexy sometimes, so totally. no dissing the tracksuits, but that she was worth dressing up for. She was worth buying cute undies. She was worth taking out for coffee by herself. She was worth watching movies instead of working. She was worth hiring someone to do the lawns because she was sick of kind of doing it and saving the $30 a week. When I reinstated my own self-worth, my how I presented to the world, how I showed up as a lover was so enhanced. And embodiment of that erotic mother, ownership of the mother who's not prepared to let go of her desire for a great relationship, great sex, and great connection was massive. And as you say, that involved me changing some ideas about what sex was. This is really what started my journey into Tantra and into that kind of, and into the different ways of relating, was the fact that what we've been taught and what we witness on TV and with porn and everything like that was way more about friction, about gratification, and about a start and a finish.
Coming.
Yeah, just about coming. And I decided that my journey, I'm a different woman now, and within me are so many different aspects, depending on the cycle, depending on where I am around the childbirth birth cycle as well. And that the man or the woman who is close with me and who is interacting with me, my beloved, he is going to receive me, or he is going to penetrate me in many, many different ways. And he's going to get a variety of experiences. And that is deeply, deeply erotic and sensual. I mean, there's times in our cycle, woman, when we are like sex kittens, when the fertility is running high and we want to play and we want to move and our pussy feels so different, to midway through our period or our moon, where there is this earthiness, this rawness, where it's sort of less about a desire for a fiery connection and more about sort of returning to the darkness and to the shadow and to sort of earthly play.
Yeah, I love.
And it moves throughout the whole thing, with pregnancy even more so.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love that. And I love how you've spoken about different desires throughout the cycle, because I love paying attention to what I want in like the 4 different seasons. I notice when I'm on my period, I really prefer to have like lower root lusty, like, yeah, what you're saying, like shadow, like
right.
Sex,
yes.
like like I'm very kind of, I always can get very kind of frustrated and feisty, and I'm like, just get over here and just ravish me. And then when I'm ovulating, I'm so much more like open and playful and fun and light and just like kitten. And yeah, so it's such a cool exercise to tune into how you feel throughout your cycle. And
mothers, this is a little microcosm of pregnant compared to pregnancy, which is these, the whole pussy, the whole vagina changes into this engorged, throbbing, deeply sensitive. Many women feel a huge sense and horniness throughout pregnancy, but then total aversion to breast touch, or then so much breast touch and not deep penetration. And it gives you that opportunity to let your partner know about you, because they want to know. Start explaining things, start to show things, start to open up the seasons within you, the variation within you. Own that. And let him know how he can love you in different ways. I know that partners really, really get off on that, being part of that sacred experience. And if penetration is not his style when you're pregnant, this is a real thing for some men who feel an awkwardness, or who feel strange sort of entering a woman while she's like perhaps heavily pregnant. There are so many other really beautiful ways that you can touch and feel and breathe and be with your lover. Yeah. And there are so many resources out there on this as well. I know Lalulah has many, and I speak of lots as well. Ways to love that isn't friction to gratification. Yeah. Instead, pathways to pleasure.
Beautiful. I love that. And so again, when it comes to our lovers and maintaining healthy sexuality throughout pregnancy and birth and motherhood, is not always necessarily about penetrative sex and that, you know, orgasm focused style. It's more just about connection, intimacy, finding new and exciting ways to communicate your desires with your partner. And that is so erotic and so healthy, and will inevitably lead into that kind of spark of sexuality again when the time is right.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because often, because we're not what we were before we had sex, we worry that something is wrong. We worry that there's an issue, or that there's a problem, and we need to change it up, or we need to do whatever. And that's so not the case. Instead, focus on stoking the embers. Yeah. Right? That keeping something alive within, even if all your hormones are wanting to shut off and not have sex, not engage, still spending the time to sit with yourself and to work out what's below, what's underneath. Still giving yourself a couple of treats a week, whatever they look like, as long as they're nourishing for the body and not necessarily always a Moro bar. Right? Yeah. Making sure that they're high quality, making sure that they bring a smile and joy to your face, helps you to stay connected to the woman who became pregnant in the first place, to the woman who felt desirous and and a hub of creation, which is what she is.
Yeah, beautiful. What's that hormone that kind of surges through the body after birth? Is it prolactin?
Many
Okay,
hormones.
well, yeah.
But prolactin, I mean, you've got this hormonal interplay which totally changes the pleasure centers of the body. I mean, oxytocin is primarily released or stimulated through the genital play, right, pre-pregnancy and post-pregnancy, that moves right up to around where the nipples are. And so the nipples become ultra sensitive, and many women say, I feel a numbness in my yoni. You know, there's hormonal reasons.
Yeah.
It's not just you feeling not attracted to your partner or not sexy anymore. Your body is dancing within this chemical interplay.
Yeah.
That's keeping your baby alive and keeping you sustaining them and all that. And know that this too shall pass. That's a great one, and I know many women would say that to me, having babies who didn't sleep through the night, or my breasts were bleeding post breastfeeding afterwards, or my yoni was so sore, and I would not believe them. You know, I would say no. Like, yeah, I cannot imagine ever getting out of this. In fact, I remember being pregnant and being 2 weeks overdue, and being like, maybe I will be the only woman ever to always be pregnant. Because I felt like this baby was just simply not coming. And I look back and I giggle at this, right? But there are these places which we can feel really alone or really unique, and know that there is so much more at play, and that whatever is at play has a reason, and it too shall pass.
Oh, I love that. I feel such a deep sense of relief in my body after hearing that. And it's so beautiful to just, allow women to be where they are and understand that there isn't an expectation to be this, wildly outrageous sexual goddess straight out of hospital with your newborn.
Right.
It is completely natural to actually not want to engage in that kind of sex. And that's why, again, having that communication with your partner and using it as a fun and pleasurable activity and experiment between the two of you to get to know a new way of connecting and relating while you're going through this huge transition in your life.
Totally.
And get support, like therapy if you can get it. I mean, there's got to be counselors out there for newborn mothers and stuff, and communities, and set yourself up with the support that you need. If it's not your parents, friends, okay, I'm going to refer to my dog again. Sorry guys, but when I first got my dog, it was a lot for me. It was a lot. And I was like, I need to find other people with dogs so that we can dog share. And so I made friends who could look after my dog sometimes if I needed a break, and vice versa, and we just supported each other. And so it's that kind of whole mindset of it takes a village, and just try and build that up around you so that you can get the support that you need to nourish yourself, your baby, and your relationship.
That is so true. And I think that we can look outside if we need it, for sure. Counseling and all these things like therapy and community and all of that is vital. And that has been a huge part of me learning how to move forward with things that have struck me as difficult. But I think developing a sense of self-inquiry, right? An awareness of yourself. And being really, really honest, because that's what it took me when I left my relationship. I could look outside and buy another house, or have another baby, or work towards another degree, but when I actually dropped all of that and came within, the answer was so strikingly there for me. And I think at the core, we all know this. We all know that another night of Netflix and TV dinners is not what our relationship needs. It needs to look at each other in the eye and be like, things need to change. I'm ready.
Yeah.
Another night of doing another load of washing that could wait till the morning, instead of coming into your room, shutting the door for 15 minutes, kids will be fine just there, and breathing and allowing some tears to flow, allowing some joy, some pleasure, allowing yourself just to lie back and not feel pulled at, peed on, whatever it was. That's really important. So tuning in and developing a sense of self-inquiry, self-nourishment, and knowing you can self-source if you're truthful to yourself.
Yeah, beautiful.
It's really empowering to me. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Okay, we're going to wrap up. I'm going to throw some quick cues at you.
Yeah.
So the first one is, how do you cultivate more pleasure in your life?
I cultivate more pleasure through listening to what I desire. And even if it's scary, through following those desires.
Epic. And that comes with like radical honesty, right? What we were just talking about just before is being really honest with ourselves and then communicating from
100%.
from that place. Epic. Next question is, what have you learned about self-love recently?
I've learnt that self-love isn't always manicures and pedicures and spa treatments and retreats in Bali. That self-love is being honest with yourself and being prepared to listen to yourself. So to being prepared to really hear what's lying below.
Epic. That was a big piece at the moment. Hey?
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Last question is, what has been the most influential book that you've read? And I know that is like asking you to choose your favorite child, but you can only choose one. So what is the most influential book?
So easy. Women Who Run with the Wolves.
Oh, epic. Awesome.
A deeply, deeply nourishing read. Yeah, no words needed.
Gosh, I have that on my bookshelf and I've not picked it up for about years, but I know the day will come. I know, yeah. Beautiful. And I'll link to that in the show notes.
Yay.
Thank you so much, Nikki.
Such a pleasure. That was fun.
Such a pleasure.
Woo.
If you enjoyed this episode, hit like and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. And don't forget to share it with someone who you think could benefit from hearing it too. You can also sign up for Lalulah news and stay up to date with all the juicy content that we only share on email. And I want to take a moment to honor you for following your curiosity and prioritizing your pleasure in this way. And until next time, thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back with another episode soon.